Peter Sims, the author of Little Bets. Peter, you argue that we all need to make, especially entrepreneurs, need to make many little bets. Some of them will come off, most won't. What that means, though, is we all have to learn to live with failure. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, and it depends on how you define failure. I mean, if failure
failure is failure.
Well,
it's
failure
easy in theory.
is learning. Failure is learning, right? I mean, let's talk about how do you define failure? I mean,
failure is not succeeding in what you want to succeed in.
Well, another way of looking at it would be it's a way to learn. I mean, a little bit is a way to learn.
This book only sells.
A little bit is a way to learn. Right? I mean, Chris Rock, when he goes out on tour on HBO, he's perfect. He's flawless, right? But to get there, he spent 6 months or a year in small clubs, and so he's had to put himself out there. He's had to fail constantly. But is that failure? I mean, it's in front of a small audience, right? He's learning. He's willing to make himself look stupid in front of 30 people. The same principles apply to the way the lean startup movement, what Eric Ries talks about. Put yourself out there with a small group of people first. Discover what the opportunities are, what the problems are, and then move into the areas where you can make big bets. Now, personal failure is different. If you are in a company and it completely fails and you have to pick up the pieces, that requires a lot of resilience and a lot of perseverance. But I think that's absolutely crucial to innovation, creativity, and long-term success for any individual.
What advice would you give a lot of startup entrepreneurs out there watching Techcrunch for whom failure is still very hard to deal with? What advice would you give as they iterate their venture, their startup, their book, their idea, their life?
Yeah. Listen, and I don't discount the challenge associated with failure or setback, especially constant and persistent setback and failure. And you know, the best thing that I've come across working with entrepreneurs in venture, or you know, my last book was on leadership and studying how leaders rebounded from failure, prominent leaders, or there's a portion of this book on how one can develop a growth mindset. And this research, I think, is the most powerful thing I've come across. It's done by a professor at Stanford, Carol Dweck, who talks about how we can have either a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. So a growth mindset would be like, think of Michael Jordan, right, where he had to constantly work, got cut from the high school basketball team, had to constantly work to overcome setbacks in order to develop his game over his career. Same could be said about his three-point game when he got into the pros. Whereas people with a fixed mindset are like, Dweck calls John McEnroe somebody with a fixed mindset. Anytime they get threatened with a setback or failure, they throw a tantrum, they blame others.
Well, he did all right, McEnroe, right?
He did all right, but I mean, he wasn't Michael Jordan, right? And he wasn't one who constantly developed his game over time to be the best, you know, of his generation. And so I think that, you know, the challenge is just that, you know, all of us have elements of both these mindsets, and setbacks and failure aren't easy for any of us. I mean, just doing this type of work, I experienced that as well. But if you can develop that resilience, which Dweck says you can over time by just recognizing whether you have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset, and constantly seeing each experience as an opportunity to grow, it can have a profound shift in a person's psychological approach over time. And so I think psychology is a really important part of this book and about how one would be an entrepreneur. Neuroscience research as well shows that you can develop these capacities over time.
But there's only one Michael Jordan. There are many people for whom every little bet is a failure. What would you say to them?
Well, that's why I define a little bet as something that's achievable and affordable. So hopefully there's a floor for everyone where they can do something, whether it's just reshape a meeting or, you know, try jotting some ideas down on a piece of paper that you bounce off of friends and family, like how this book got started, to just get out there and see that you can create things by using this process, and that you don't start with brilliant ideas. Whether you're a filmmaker, or whether you're Frank Gehry, the architect, or you're Chris Rock, or you're Steve Jobs in a lot of cases. It's a discovery process. And I'm just trying to empower people with this book to look at the world more through that lens.
Is it true in one's personal life as well? If you're dating, should you make lots of little bets?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, isn't that what dating really is? It's a lot of little bets, and you kind of learn as you go. You try one thing and it works well, but there's another part that doesn't quite work, and then
But 1 in 2 marriages still end in failure.
That's right. So, you know, this is why we need this book. This is why we need these ideas, these little bets over time. No, but I mean, that's life, like you said earlier. Life is kind of a constant creative process, right? You're learning as you go. And so how can you be learning in a way that's where you're growing over time? Dating is the same as creating companies, I think, in that respect.
You married or single?
Single.